Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. Got my little co-host here. This morning we will be in Psalm 120, verses 1 through 7. In my distress I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me. I said, O Lord, rescue me from those who lie with their lips and those who deceive with their tongue. How will he severely punish you, you deceptive talker? Here's how, with the sharp arrows of warriors, with arrowheads forged over the hot coals. How miserable I am, for I have lived temporarily in Meshech. I have resided among the tents of Kedar. For too long I have had to reside with those who hate peace. I am committed to peace, but when I speak, they want to make war. I just laugh because I've heard Muslim apologists before point to Kedar as the Arabic people in the Bible and use it as evidence pointing to Muhammad. But here in Psalm 120, you have the psalmist being miserable, having resided among the tents of Kedar, having resided among those who hate peace. So, interesting implications there. Let's see what Guzik has to say. Psalm 120 is the first of a series of 15 psalms, each with the title, A Song of Ascents. The reason for this collection and arrangement is not precisely stated. Many different explanations have been given for the degrees, or steps, or ascents. The stairs of the temple songs, the step songs, the gradual songs, the progression songs, the procession from Babylon songs, or the pilgrim festival songs. James Montgomery Boyce explained the first suggestion. The Talmud says that the 15 songs correspond to the 15 steps between these courtyards. Some have even supposed that the songs were sung by the Levites from these steps, though this is pure speculation. Probably the best explanation is the last one listed, that these were songs for the people of God as they made the pilgrim journey to Jerusalem and the temple at the three appointed feasts, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. 1 Chronicles 13:6 uses this phrase to describe the bringing of the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem, to bring up from there the Ark of God the Lord. According to Charles Spurgeon and many others, the word we translate ascents shares the same root with to bring up in 1 Chronicles 13:6. We shall consider them as songs sung by those pilgrims who went up to Jerusalem to worship. These songs of desire and hope and approach are appropriate for the pilgrims' use as they go up to worship. This being likely so, then Jesus would have sung these songs on his many journeys to Jerusalem from Galilee. The author of these 15 psalms is not known, and most probably they were not the work of one person. They have been attributed to David, to Solomon, to Ezra, to Haggai, to Zechariah, and to Malachi, without any positive evidence. They are, however, excellent in their kind, and written with much elegance, containing strong and nervous sentiments of the most exalted piety, expressed with great felicity of language in a few words. From Adam Clark. In my distress I cried out to the Lord. The people of God often find themselves in distress. They have a refuge in their distress. They can do as the psalmist did when he cried to the Lord. They can share the singer's testimony, and he heard me. In my distress addeth wings to our devotions. Our Savior, being in agony, prayed more earnestly. So do all his members, and especially when they lie under the lash of a lying tongue, as here, from Trapp. I cried to the Lord. It is of little use to appeal to our fellows on the matter of slander, for the more we stir in it, the more it spreads. It is of no avail to appeal to the honor of the slanderers, for they have none, and the most pietous demands for justice will only increase their malignity and encourage them to fresh insult. From Spurgeon. And he heard me. The psalmist remembered God's past faithfulness in his present need. Devout hearts argue that what Jehovah has done once, he will do again. Since his mercy endureth forever, he will not weary of bestowing, nor will former gifts exhaust his stores. Men say, I have given so often that I can give no more. God says, I have given, therefore I will give. From Maclaren. When we are slandered, it is a joy that the Lord knows us, and cannot be made to doubt our uprightness. He will not hear the lie against us, but he will hear our prayer against the lie. From Spurgeon. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips. The psalmist describes the nature of his distress. Evil words spoken against him from lying lips and a deceitful tongue. There was some comfort in this cry, knowing that the evil that was spoken against the singer was not true. It was spoken with lying lips and with a deceitful tongue. The lies our soul needs deliverance from are not only the lies said about us, but also the lies said to us. Lies about God, lies about man, lies about oneself, lies about life, identity, purpose, and happiness. From these lies, deliver my soul, O Lord. Yeah. And I think that's a good prayer to pray. Because I don't know about you, but I struggle with negative self-talk. And the issues that people often bring up can add to that fire. So I think it's important to combat these lies with the truth and pray, deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips. What shall be given to you? The psalmist shifted from his prayer to God to speak to the false tongue of those who cause him distress. He warned those lying lips of their destiny, of what shall be done to you. In light of the judgment described in these verses, it is worth remembering that a false tongue is likened to a sharp razor. Psalm 52:2, to a sharp sword, to sharp arrows. Sharp arrows of the warrior. The false tongue of the singer's enemies would soon know sharp arrows. They had cast out lies like dangerous missiles, and now the sharp arrows of judgment would come against them. Reminds me of a proverb. Like a madman who slings firebrands, arrows, and death is one who lies to his neighbor and says, was I not joking? These are punishments justly inflicted on a tongue, the words of which have been keen and killing as arrows, and which, by its lies and calumnies, hath contributed to set the world on fire. From Horn. The liar, wounding through his weapons, will be destroyed with far more potent shafts than lies. God's arrows of truth and coals of judgment. From Kidner. Woe is me that I dwell in Meshech. Meshech was a distant place, far from the land of Israel. Kedar was a place associated with the nomadic tribes in the lands surrounding Israel. Meshech was the name of a group of barbarous tribes who, in the times of Sargon and Sennacherib, inhabited the highlands to the east of Cilicia, and in latter days retreated northwards to the neighborhood of the Black Sea. Kedar was one of the Bedouin tribes of the Arabian Desert. From Maclaren. These two peoples were located so far apart geographically that they can only be taken here as a general term for the heathen. No one person could have lived among both. They are examples of warlike tribes, among whom the singers of Psalm 120 had no true home. From Boise. The verbs dwell, garti, sojourn, and live, sakanti, tabernacle, dwell, are significantly chosen. Even though the psalmist may have enjoyed a permanent residence, he felt as if he was no more than a sojourner among his contemporaries. He did not feel at home among an ungodly people. From Van Gemeren. My soul has dwelt too long with one who hates peace. The psalmist ached because he lived among the ungodly and was distant from Israel and its people. He longed for God's shalom, peace. His enemies, who had lying lips, hated God's shalom. This was a good discontentment. Contentment in the place where deceit is practiced and strife is loved is base contentment. Men of faith must there find the distress which inspires the cry to God. From Morgan. The very society of such, be they ever so tame and civil, is tedious, and unsavory to a good soul, like the slime and filth that is congealed when many toads and other vermin join together from a trap. God can work good even in the troubles of difficult company, and remember there is a compensation in that the strict scrutiny of thy foes makes thee ever so much more watchful and prayerful, and drives thee oftener to the bosom of God from there. This makes Psalm 120 a fitting start to the Song of Ascents. As the pilgrim journey to Jerusalem began, the author was mindful of the weariness endured living apart from the supportive community of God's people. The psalmist needed this trip to Jerusalem at feast time, and needed the larger community of the people of God. I am for peace. He loved and longed for God's peace, his shalom. Properly, I am peace, desirous of peace, peaceful, forbearing, in fact, peace itself, from Spurgeon. The clause, I am a man of peace, translates a nominal phrase, I peace. In his whole being, the psalmist longs for the establishment of peace, from Van Gemeren. Jesus was a man of peace. He lived to make peace by the blood of his cross. He died to complete it, from Pierce. When I speak, they are for war. The psalmist sought to speak words of peace and goodness, to represent and promote those values in our own community. Yet every time he did, the response was hostile, characteristic of those who are for war. At least for a while, he needed better company, and he would find it among the pilgrims who came to Jerusalem and who shared in these songs of ascents. So the psalm ends as with a long-drawn sigh. It inverts the usual order of similar psalms, in which the description of need is wont to precede the prayer for deliverance. It thus sets forth, most pathetically, the sense of discordance between a man and his environment, which urges the soul that feels it to seek a better home. So this is a true pilgrim psalm, from Maclaren. Interesting. That the psalmist here should say, I peace. To me, again, it points towards Jesus, in that you had in the previous psalm this man who loved peace, loved God's word and did his commands. And here you have a man dwelling amongst warlike people who hate peace and have lying lips and seem to antagonize him without a cause, declaring, I peace. And the Song of Ascents, I don't know. It seems to me that I'm not sure necessarily how to get this across, but I think when the pilgrim is going to the temple, and ascending up the temple steps to God, it in a way mirrors what God did for us in coming down, condescending, and being among us and traveling this path to the cross where he ascended on high, type thing. Anywho, carrying on here. Proverbs 16, verses 16 and 17. How much better it is to acquire wisdom than gold. To acquire understanding is more desirable than silver. The highway of the upright is to turn away from evil. The one who guards his way safeguards his life. Yeah. Many people spend a whole lot of money for just the knowledge, going to college or trade schools or hiring some teacher for themselves. But here the preacher extols the benefits of wisdom, that it's better than money. Yeah, and I think that proves to be true, that an upright life, is better than hoards of riches, because indeed, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet to lose his own soul? Samuel, 2 Samuel, chapter 20, verse 14, through chapter 22, verse 20. This being after David returns as king over Judah, but the rest of the tribes of Israel depart, having followed Sheba. Sheba traveled through all the tribes of Israel to Abel of Beth-makkah and all the Berite region. When they had assembled, they too joined him. So Joab's men came and laid siege against him in Abel of Beth-makkah. They prepared a siege ramp outside the city, which stood against its outer rampart, as all of Joab's soldiers were trying to break through the wall so that it would collapse. A wise woman called out from the city, listen up, tell Joab, come here, so that I may speak to you." When he approached her, the woman asked, "Are you Joab?" He replied, "I am." She said to him, "Listen to the words of your servant." He said, "Go ahead, I'm listening." She said, "In the past, they would always say, 'Let them inquire in Abel,' and that is how they settled things. I represent the peaceful and the faithful in Israel. You are attempting to destroy an important city in Israel. Why should you swallow up the Lord's inheritance?" Joab answered, "Get serious. I don't want to swallow up or destroy anything. That's not the way things are. There's a man from the hill country of Ephraim named Sheba, son of Bichri. He has rebelled against King David. Give me just this one man, and I will leave the city." The woman said to Joab, "This very minute his head will be thrown over the wall to you." Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. Joab blew the trumpet, and his men dispersed from the city, each going to his own home. Joab returned to the king in Jerusalem. Now Joab was the general in command of all the army of Israel. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Kerethites and the Pelethites. Adoniram was supervisor of the work crews. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the secretary. Sheva was the scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. Ira the Jairite was David's personal priest. During David's reign there was a famine for 3 consecutive years. So David inquired of the Lord. The Lord said, "It is because of Saul and his blood-stained family, because he murdered the Gibeonites." So the king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke with them. Now the Gibeonites were not descendants of Israel. They were a remnant of the Amorites. The Israelites had made a promise to them, but Saul tried to kill them because of his zeal for the people of Israel and Judah. David said to the Gibeonites, "What can I do for you? And how can I make amends so that you will bless the Lord's inheritance?" The Gibeonites said to him, "We have no claim to silver or gold from Saul or from his family, nor would we be justified in putting to death anyone in Israel." David asked, "What then are you asking me to do for you?" They replied to the king, "As for this man who exterminated us and who schemed against us, so that we are destroyed and left without status throughout all the borders of Israel, let 7 of his male descendants be turned over to us, and we will execute them before the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, who was the Lord's chosen one." The king replied, "I will turn them over." The king had mercy on Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, in light of the Lord's oath that had been taken between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. So the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Aiah's daughter, Rizpah, whom she had borne to Saul, and the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab, whom she had borne to Adriel, the son of Barzillai the Maholathite. He turned them over to the Gibeonites, and they executed them on the hill before the Lord. The 7 of them died together. They were put to death during harvest time, during the first days of the beginning of the barley harvest. Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock. From the beginning of the harvest until the rain fell on them, she did not allow the birds of the air to feed on them by day, nor the wild animals by night. When David was told what Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from the leaders of Jabesh-Gilead. They had secretly taken them from the plaza at Beth-shan. It was there that Philistines publicly exposed their corpses after they had killed Saul at Gilboa. David brought the bones of Saul and of Jonathan, his son, from there. They also gathered up the bones of those who had been executed. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the land of Benjamin at Zelah, in the grave of his father Kish. After they had done everything that the king had commanded, God responded to their prayers for the land. Another battle was fought between the Philistines and Israel. So David went down with his soldiers and fought the Philistines. David became exhausted. Now Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of Rapha, had a spear that weighed 300 bronze shekels, and he was armed with a new weapon. He said that he would kill David, but Abishai the son of Zeruiah came to David's aid, striking the Philistine down and killing him. Then David's men took an oath, saying, "You will not go out to battle with us again. You must not extinguish the lamp of Israel." Later there was another battle with the Philistines, this time in Gob. On that occasion, Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was one of the descendants of Rapha. Yet another battle occurred with the Philistines in Gob. On that occasion, Elhanan, the son of Jair, the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Yet another battle occurred in Gath. On that occasion there was a large man who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He too was a descendant of Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimea, killed him. These 4 were the descendants of Rapha, who lived in Gath. They were killed by David and his soldiers. David sang to the Lord the words of this song, when the Lord rescued him from the power of all his enemies, including Saul. He said, "The Lord is my high ridge, my stronghold, my deliverer. My God is my rocky summit where I take shelter, my shield, the horn that saves me, my stronghold, my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I called to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I was delivered from my enemies. The waves of death engulfed me, the currents of chaos overwhelmed me. The ropes of Sheol tightened around me, the snares of death trapped me. In my distress I called to the Lord, I called to my God. From his heavenly temple he heard my voice. He listened to my cry for help. The earth heaved and shook. The foundations of the sky trembled. They heaved because he was angry. Smoke ascended from his nose. Fire devoured as it came from his mouth. He hurled down fiery coals. He made the sky sink as he descended. A thick cloud was under his feet. He mounted a winged angel and flew. He glided on the wings of the wind. He shrouded himself in darkness, in thick rain clouds. From the brightness in front of him came coals of fire. The Lord thundered from the sky. The Sovereign One shouted loudly. He shot arrows and scattered them, lightning and routed them. The depths of the sea were exposed. The inner regions of the world were uncovered by the Lord's battle cry, by the powerful breath from his nose. He reached down from above and grabbed me. He pulled me from the surging water. He rescued me from my strong enemy, from those who hate me, for they were too strong for me. They confronted me in my day of calamity, but the Lord helped me. He brought me out into a wide open place. He delivered me because he was pleased with me. It's interesting. Reading through Revelation right now, and a lot of the imagery in that 2 Samuel 22 seems reminiscent of things in Revelation, where you have the earth, 2 Samuel 22:8, the earth heaved and shook, the foundations of the sky trembled. They heaved because he was angry. Talk of like the celestial bodies losing their light in Revelation, and the sky. It's Revelation 6, I believe, with the bowls. Yeah, the heavenly bodies being extinguished and thrown to earth type thing. And then, like, where was it? Fire devoured as it came from his mouth. He hurled down fiery coals. And I think it was Revelation 8. You have the prayers of the saints in a censer with incense mixed with fire being thrown down to the earth type thing. Yeah. So, interesting shared imagery there. But yeah, so what we read, you have Sheba here, who was inciting rebellion again against David, Not that he was one to incite it a subsequent time, but here you have rebellion being incited by another party against David. So he goes and hides out in the city, Abel of Bethmaachah, and Joab throws up a siege wall against it, and this old wise woman in the city is like, why are you trying to destroy the city? What do we do to you? And Joab's like, we need to... I'm not trying to destroy the city. I'm trying to get Sheba, son of Bichri, here. And she says to him, his head will be thrown over to you. And thus it was. Then you have a famine on the land for 3 years. And it being done by the Lord because of him slaying the Gibeonites, which he did in his zeal for Israel, I suppose. Which, it's interesting to me. God commanded Saul to slay Amalek, and he was slack in doing so. But here you have him going beyond and destroying Gibeon, which he wasn't called to do. And the Lord punishing him for it. Well, yes. So they demand that 7 of Saul's sons be brought out to be executed as justice for him slaying the Gibeonites here. And then you have David again fighting with the army against the Philistines. But a close call happens with David, and he grows tired on the battlefield and is almost slain by somebody he was fighting against. But he's saved by one of his mighty men. And they say, you're not going out with us again here, David. And you have a few other tales of his mighty men being relayed here. And then you have David's Psalm of Deliverance, which is cool. Let's see here what Guzik has to say. Starting from verse 14. All the people went on after Joab. For all his ruthless devotion to David, Joab was a true leader. The soldiers naturally followed the commander who successfully led them many times before. And he went through all the tribes of Israel. Joab was able to find men loyal to David in all the tribes of Israel. Though Sheba was able to assemble an army against David, there were still many people loyal to David. And a wise woman cried out from the city. When Sheba took refuge in the city of Abel, Joab set a siege against the city. Siege warfare was a terrible ordeal for the citizens of the besieged city, and this wise woman was smart enough to seek a speedy end to the struggle. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. Joab was a practical man. He had nothing against the city of Abel, only against Sheba. If the people of Abel helped him to get Sheba, it was all the better. So they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it out to Joab. Sheba probably thought he was safe within the walls of the city, but no one is safe when they run against God's will. There isn't a wall high enough or strong enough to protect us against God and his will. We can make a spiritual analogy out of Sheba, his rebellion and his refuge in the city of Abel. Every man's breast is a city enclosed. Every sin is a traitor that lurketh within those walls. God calleth for Sheba's head, neither hath he any quarrel to us for our person, but for our sin. If we love the head of our traitor above the life of our soul, we shall justly perish in the vengeance from trap. It were happy if all such traitors might hop headless from trap. So ended the rebellion of Sheba, yet the division between Judah and the other 11 tribes of Israel remained. After the death of Solomon, there was a civil war that permanently divided the 12 tribes into 2 nations, the southern kingdom of Judah and the northern kingdom of Israel. And Joab was over all the army of Israel. Though he gained the position through murder, David allowed Joab to take control of the armies of Israel. Benaiah, Adoram, Jehoshaphat, Sheva, Zadok, and Abiathar, Ira the Jairite. The greatness of David's kingdom was not built on David's abilities alone. He knew how to assemble and lead an effective team. Some think that the idea behind the phrase chief minister is that Ira was sort of a chaplain to David. He was probably sort of a domestic chaplain to the king, from Clark. If David, a man after God's heart and the sweet psalmist of Israel, needed devotional help, we should not think ourselves above it. A 3-year famine prompts David to seek God, and David inquired of the Lord. David wisely sought God in the face of chronic problems. David was concerned after the first year of famine, and even more after the second. But 2 years of famine didn't make him look to a spiritual cause. Yet, after 3 years of famine, David inquired of the Lord. David didn't see a spiritual reason in every problem, but he did not shut his eyes to the hand of God in circumstances. The first and second year he might look upon it as punishment laid upon them for the common sins of the land, but when he saw it continuing a third year also, he thought there was something in it more than ordinary, and therefore, although he knew well the natural cause to be drought, yet he inquired after the supernatural, as wise men should do, from Trapp. It is because of Saul and his bloodthirsty house, because he killed the Gibeonites. This massacre isn't recorded in 1 Samuel, but David didn't question that it happened. Apparently, at some time during his reign, Saul attacked and killed many of the Gibeonites. The whole people suffered for Saul's sin, either because they approved it, or at least bewailed it not. Neither did what they could to hinder it, whereby they became accessory, from Trapp. He killed the Gibeonites. When David heard it was because of an attack against the Gibeonites, a chill probably ran up his back. He knew they were a people especially wrong for Saul to attack and kill. In the days of Joshua, more than 400 years before David's time, Israel swore not to harm the Gibeonites, a neighboring tribe. God expected Israel to keep its promise, even though the Gibeonites tricked Israel into making this agreement. Saul's crime was not only in killing the Gibeonites, but also in breaking this ancient and important oath. This emphasizes many important principles. God expects us to keep our promises. God expects nations to keep their promises. Time does not diminish our obligation to promises. God's correction may come a long time after the offense. If God has such a high expectation that men keep their covenants, we can have great confidence that he will keep his covenant with us. There is an emerald rainbow around the throne of God to proclaim his remembrance to his everlasting covenant with his people. The king called the Gibeonites. David knew he had to do something about this, and so he initiated a resolution with the Gibeonites. Saul had sought to kill them in his zeal for the children of Israel and Judah. We normally think of such zeal as something good, yet Saul's misguided zeal was a sin and brought calamity on Israel. This is a good example of how good intentions don't excuse bad actions. We often excuse bad actions in ourselves and others because of what we think are good intentions, but God examines both our intentions and our actions. What shall I do for you? In resolving this matter with the Gibeonites, David did not dictate terms to them. He came to them as a servant, not a king. That you may bless the inheritance of the Lord. David felt that if the Gibeonites could bless Israel, then the reconciliation would be complete, and God's chastening of Israel would end. We will have no silver or gold from Saul or from his house, nor shall you kill any man in Israel for us. The Gibeonites made it clear that they didn't want money or direct retribution. Though Saul made a wholesale slaughter of the Gibeonites, they didn't ask for the same among the people of Israel. Let 7 men of his descendants be delivered to us. In those ancient times, the request of the Gibeonites was considered reasonable. Instead of money, or an eye for an eye, they only asked for justice against Saul through his descendants. David agreed to this. I will give them. Which God had now a purpose to root out, that they might not be further troublesome to David, who had lately suffered so much in the quiet enjoyment of the kingdom, from Trapp. I will give them. David knew this was the right thing to do. Some believed he knew it was right because David knew that Saul's descendants helped in or benefited directly from that massacre. Obviously, we are not told everything about this indictment. We must trust the principle stated by Abraham. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? The king spared Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the most notable living descendant of Saul, and it made the most sense to put him as the first of the 7 to be delivered to the Gibeonites for execution. Yet David promised to protect and bless Mephibosheth, and he would not fulfill one promise at the expense of another. They hanged them on the hill before the Lord. David chose 7 male descendants of Saul to give over to the Gibeonites, and they executed them by public hanging. The phrase "before the Lord" implies God approved of their execution. The method of death was also important because it fulfilled the promise of Deuteronomy 21:23. He who is hanged is accursed of God. These descendants of Saul bore the curse Saul deserved, and so delivered Israel from the guilt of their sin against the Gibeonites. The promise from Deuteronomy 21:23 explains why Jesus died the way he did. Galatians 3:13 explains Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it is written, "Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree." Spread it for herself on the rock until the late rains poured on them from heaven. Rizpah, the mother of 2 of the 7 delivered for execution, held a vigil over the bodies until the late rains came. The coming of rain showed that the famine was over, that justice was satisfied, and that Israel was delivered. This means that the bodies of these men were deliberately left unburied. This was to emphasize the fact that these men were executed as an act of judgment. They gathered the bones. David gave these 7 a public burial, together with the remains of Saul and Jonathan. It's interesting, though, from Deuteronomy, where you have that, it says that, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but that their bodies shouldn't hang overnight, that their image might not be defiled, type thing. So, yeah, but I suppose this is the Gibeonites that are doing this. They performed all that the king commanded. David directed all of this, and he did it partly on the principle stated in Numbers 35:33. So you shall not pollute the land where you are, for blood defiles the land, and no atonement can be made for the land, for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. The idea is that blood from unpunished murders defiles the land, and God will one day require that blood from the nation. After that, God heeded the prayer for the land. It wasn't as if, from the time Saul massacred the Gibeonites until David's day, that God did not answer any of Israel's prayers. Yet there came a time when God wanted to deal with this sin, and at that time, he would not answer their prayers until they dealt with it. There are many reasons for unanswered prayer. When we see that our prayers are not answered, we should seek God to address the problem. And David grew faint. Even a great man of God grows old. As the years went on, David became unable to fight as he once did. In this battle against the Philistines, David's life was endangered when he grew faint in battle against a descendant of Goliath. Israel faced the challenge of what they would do when they saw weakness in their leader. Since it was a weakness that could be understood, David's increasing frailty and old age, they should rally around their leader and supply what he cannot. Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid. When David's strength failed, God protected him through the strength of others. God will allow us to be in places where we need the strength of others. From Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him. You shall go out no more with us to battle. In his advanced age, it was time for David to retire from the field of battle. His season as a warrior had passed. David is considered as the lamp by which all Israel was guided, and without whom all the nation must be involved in darkness. From Clark. The body drowneth not whilst the head is above water. When that once sinketh, death is near. So here. Pray therefore for the preservation of good princes. We cannot pray for them, and not pray for ourselves. From Trap. Now it happened afterward. The description of victory over Philistine giants showed that Israel could slay giants without David. Sibbecai, Elhanan, Jonathan. These men accomplished heroic deeds when David was finished fighting giants. God will continue to raise up leaders when the leaders of the previous generation passed from the scene. David's legacy lay not only in what he accomplished, but also in what he left behind, a people prepared for victory. David's triumphs were meaningful, not only for himself, but for others who learned victory through his teaching and example. Who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. Commentators like Adam Clarke can't resist reminding us that this is a known phenomenon. This is not a solitary instance. Tavernier informs us that the eldest son of the Emperor of Java, who reigned in 1649, had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. I once saw a young girl in the country of Londonderry, in Ireland, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, but her stature had nothing gigantic in it. Fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Part of the idea is that David conquers enemies in the present, so it will be better for Solomon in the future. Our present victory is not only good for us now, but it also passes something important on to the next generation. I think that's important to realize as well. I think oftentimes we can trivialize our fight against sin, not realizing the widespread ramifications that it can have, not only on us, but on future generations. See, too, the effects of letting sin fester in our lives in David when he wouldn't address the rampant lust in his life, and so ended up passing that to his sons, where you have Amnon, his son, sleeping with his sister. And subsequent to him, you have Solomon with his 1,000 wives, which his wives led him away from God, and thus broke the kingdom in parts. So, see the importance of addressing sin in our lives. Let those who after long service find themselves waning in strength be content to abide with the people of God, still shining for them as a lamp, and thus enabling them to carry on the same divine enterprises. Such action in the last days of life is also great and high service. My rock and my fortress. Then David spoke to the Lord the words of this song. For many reasons, most commentators assume that this was a psalm of David, wrote and sung many years before, and is inserted at the end of 2 Samuel out of its chronological place. This is possible, but not necessary. The psalm appears almost as David's final words, hence it is a summary thanksgiving for God's many deliverances of him through his long life of service. The words of this song. With minor variations, this psalm is the same as Psalm 18. It is likely that David composed this song as a younger man, perhaps when Saul died and he first took the throne, as described in 2 Samuel 8:14, when David had subdued all his enemies, and the Lord preserved David wherever he went. Yet in his old age, David could look back with great gratitude and sing this song again, looking at his whole life. This psalm is a great summary of David's whole character, and attitude through life. Such convictions of the absolute sovereignty of Jehovah, of his omnipotent power to deliver, of the necessity for obedience to his law, and of assurance that, in the case of such obedience, he ever acts for his people, constituted the underlying strength of David's character. From Morgan. We have another form of this psalm with significant variations, and this suggests the idea that it was sung by David at different times when he reviewed his own remarkable history and observed the gracious hand of God in it all. From Spurgeon. My rock and my fortress, my deliverer. David piled title upon title in praising God. God's work for David was so big and comprehensive that it couldn't be contained in one title. In the opening sentence, which we have emphasized, the sense of truth is reinforced by the final words, even mine. By them, the singer revealed the fact that all he celebrated in song was more than theory. It was experience. From Morgan. In whom I will trust. When we see God for who he is, it is easy to trust him. when we know he is our rock and fortress, and deliverer and shield and stronghold and savior, it is natural to then trust him completely. Faith does not completely depend on knowledge, but the right knowledge of God gives great strength to faith. My Savior, you save me. Each title was meaningful to David because God fulfilled the meaning of each title in David's experience. This isn't a list of the names of God one might find in a systematic theology. This is the knowledge of God, combined with the right experience of God. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. It is well to pray to God as to one who deserves to be praised, for then we plead in a happy and confident manner. If I feel that I can, and do bless the Lord for all his past goodness, I am bold to ask great things of him. From Spurgeon. Waves, floods, sorrows, snares. Danger surrounded David on every side, physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially. David was on the brink of ruin when he cried out to God. In my distress I called upon the Lord. The enemy of our souls wants us to believe, that we can't call upon the Lord in our distress, as if we had to be right with God and sitting peacefully in prayer, in a prayer chapel to pray rightly. David knew that God hears our distress signals. He heard my voice. For David it was that simple. He cried out to God, and God heard. David also knew that God could not hear the distress of his people without taking action on their behalf. Then the earth shook. God was so concerned about David's problem that it seemed to David as if he shook the earth to meet his need. What is most impressive is the magnificent way the psalmist describes God rising from his throne in heaven in response to his servant's cry, parting the clouds and descending to fight the king's battles, accompanied by earthquakes, thunder, storms, and lightning. From Boise. And he rode upon a cherub and flew. David pictured the Lord coming to meet his need, coming with glory and speed. He came so fast to David that it seemed that God traveled upon the wings of the wind. In the original of this sublime passage, sense and sound are astonishingly well connected. The clap of the wing, the agitation and rush through the air, are expressed here in a very extraordinary manner. From Clark. The Most High uttered his voice. When God came, he spoke on David's behalf, commanding all creation to respond to his passionate desire to deliver his child. All this is a reflection of David's confidence in the love of God. David sees a God so loving that he won't tolerate the distress of his beloved. When things are right for his beloved, all creation will see his passion and urgency to meet the need of his beloved. He took me, he drew me, he delivered me. David saw God apply all that majesty and strength to the meeting of his need. They were too strong for me. The Lord was my support. David knew that the victory was due to God's hand, not due to his own ingenuity or ability. Without the Lord for support, David would fall. He delivered me because he delighted in me. David had a sense of God's delight in him. His plea for deliverance was rooted in relationship, not merely in a desire to survive. Yeah. And I think that's really cool that God hears us in heaven and acts strongly to help us. It's written elsewhere that the eyes of the Lord are looking to and fro through the whole earth to powerfully help those whose hearts are fully his. And so it was true in the case of David. So let it be true for us. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.